In a world where the Church was supposed to guide, comfort, and inspire, the darkness of the Middle Ages brought a shocking twist. Imagine a time when the very leaders of the Church, the popes, behaved more like ruthless kings and warlords than spiritual shepherds. This is the story of how the Church, which started with humble men devoted to God, turned into a place of scandal, greed, and power. Once upon a time, the first leaders of the Church, called the Vicars of Christ, were simple and humble. They lived away from the world's distractions, focusing on their faith and the teachings of Jesus. They believed that living a life of poverty and chastity was the best way to serve God, but as time passed, things changed. The Church began to get involved in the messy and violent world of politics. Instead of guiding people with love and wisdom, the leaders of the Church started to use power and fear to control others. In the 9th century, the Church faced a big problem. Powerful noble families began to take control of the papacy, the highest position in the Church. These families used the Church for their own benefit, turning it into a tool for their political and economic gains. The popes, who were supposed to be the moral leaders of Christendom, started to act more like the kings and lords they were surrounded by. They built grand cathedrals not just to glorify God, but to show off their own wealth and power. They got involved in political schemes, making deals and alliances to stay in control. Some even went as far as to wage war against their enemies. One of the most shocking examples of this corruption was the behavior of the popes themselves. The Church had a rule that priests, including the popes, should not marry or have children. This rule was meant to keep the clergy focused on their spiritual duties, and to prevent them from using their positions to benefit their families. But by the 16th century, this rule was largely ignored. Many popes had mistresses, and even acknowledged their children. They gave their relatives important positions in the Church, a practice known as Nepotism. This meant that family members could become powerful and wealthy, often without any real qualifications. For example, Pope Sixtus IV, who ruled from 1471 to 1484, appointed his nephews to important positions in the Church, even though they were young and unqualified. He even made an 8-year-old boy the Archbishop of Lisbon and an 11-year-old the Archbishop of Milan, despite the fact that they had no religious training. Another pope, Innocent VIII, who ruled from 1484 to 1492, had a son named Francescetto Cibo, who was known for his violent and immoral behavior. Francescetto would roam the streets of Rome at night, committing terrible crimes, and the Pope did nothing to stop him. To support his son's lavish lifestyle, Innocent VIII even sold church offices and positions, a practice known as simony. The corruption didn't stop there. Pope Leo X, who ruled from 1513 to 1521, also favored his family members. He appointed his cousin, Giulio de' Medici, to a high position in the Church, even though Giulio was the son of an unmarried couple. Leo X had to lie about Giulio's parentage to make it seem acceptable. He also appointed several other family members to important positions, further entrenching nepotism in the Church. This corruption and immorality in the Church led to a growing sense of anger and disillusionment among the people. One of the most vocal critics was a friar named Girolamo Savonarola. Savonarola was a passionate and charismatic preacher who lived in Florence, Italy. He was deeply troubled by the corruption he saw in the Church, especially during the reign of Pope Alexander VI, who was known for his scandalous behavior. Alexander VI was a member of the Borgia family, and he was infamous for his lavish lifestyle, his collection of pornographic art, and his involvement in political intrigues. Savonarola spoke out against the Pope's immorality and the Church's corruption. He organized public events called bonfires of the vanities, where people would burn items that he believed were sinful, such as lewd pictures, jewelry, and games. He preached that the Church had become a place of vice, and that the Pope was no longer a true Christian. His words resonated with many people who were tired of the Church's hypocrisy. However, Savonarola's criticism did not go unpunished. Pope Alexander VI, who was known for his ruthlessness, first tried to silence Savonarola by offering him a position as a cardinal. But Savonarola rejected the offer, saying he wanted a hat of blood instead, meaning he was willing to die for his beliefs. The Pope then excommunicated him, which meant that Savonarola was no longer considered a member of the Church. When Savonarola continued to speak out, the Pope had him arrested, tortured, and eventually executed. Savonarola was hanged and burned in the Piazza della Signoria in Florence, a place where he had once lit his bonfires. The story of the Church during the Middle Ages is a reminder of how power can corrupt even the most sacred institutions. The popes, who were supposed to lead with love and wisdom, instead used their positions for personal gain. This corruption led to widespread suffering and disillusionment among the people. It also set the stage for significant changes in the Church, including the Protestant Reformation, a movement that sought to reform the Church and return it to its original values. Today, the Church is a different place. While it still faces challenges, it has made efforts to address past wrongs and to focus on its spiritual mission. The story of the corrupt popes and the brave critics like Savonarola serves as a powerful lesson about the importance of holding leaders accountable and the need for integrity and morality in all aspects of life.